This is Insurance Marketing with John Carroll, Episode 5. I'm back. Let's rock.
Welcome to Insurance Marketing with John Carroll, your resource for marketing ideas, sales tips, and business strategies that help agents like you survive and thrive. And now your host, John Carroll.
Hello, and welcome to another exciting edition of Insurance Marketing with John Carroll. I'm your host. I am John Carroll. I'm the CEO and founder of Insurance Splash. And you may have noticed that this is episode number 5, but I actually haven't created a podcast episode in, I don't know, probably 8 or 9 months. And perhaps at the end of this episode, I'll give you a little bit more information about why that is, because there's a really important marketing lesson about my whole undertaking of this podcast that I'd like to share with you, because I think there's some ideas that can help out agents. But I'll come back to that later on. The thing is, though, that I'm back now, and I am intending to create new podcasts every 1 or every 2 weeks. So if you're hesitant because you know that things have been down for so long, please bear with me, because I'm really excited. I'm still excited about the podcast medium, and I believe that it's an awesome resource that will help me be able to help out more agents. So I'm excited about that. But anyways, let's talk about the topic of today's podcast, which is internet leads. Specifically, I'm going to be talking about some mistakes that I see agents making when it comes to how they handle internet leads. Now, before I actually go into the specific mistakes, and there's 15 of them that I'm going to outline today, so you might even want to take some notes, or at least remember that you can catch the show notes, which will have more information about everything I talked about, by going out to the website at insurancesplash.com/ and then just the number 5. So it's insurancesplash.com/5. That'll take you to the show notes where I'll have information. So if you can't take notes, but you want to get more details about the ideas that I talked about here, you can find that by going to that website. But so anyways, internet leads. It's kind of a love-hate relationship that a lot of folks have with internet leads. I want to give you a little bit of my personal feelings about them before I dig into things. For a long time, I've worked with agents, and I've always kind of felt like internet leads are kind of like cheating. You're kind of outsourcing your marketing to somebody else. And I know a lot of agents that hate them because they're frustrated because they're expensive, for one, but you also get a lot of bogus leads, and people are sometimes frustrated. They don't want to talk to you. So there's definitely a lot of downsides to internet leads. But with all that being said, I feel like I have to talk about a few of the pluses with them. And one of those things is that I actually get emails or phone calls from agents every single day that say, "Hey, John, I've got this idea, and I'm wondering if maybe you could help me out with it. I want to generate a website that will develop, or I want to create a website that will generate insurance leads. Can you help me with that?" And the funny thing is that every agent that I ever talk to has the same idea. They think it's like this brilliant idea. Yeah, I'm going to generate insurance leads, and it's as simple as just creating a website that does it. The truth is that it's actually a very complicated, very challenging thing to do. And you have to keep in mind that these companies that generate internet leads have really big budgets. They've been in it for a long time. And if you just think about the math of how it works, they take one of these internet leads and they sell it to, let's just say, 5 different agents. And each agent's paying, let's just say, $15. So every lead that they generate, they can make $75 worth of profit on. What that means is if they spend $50, $55, $60 to generate every single one of those leads, that's okay, because there's a profit to it. They can still do that to infinity and become billionaires. But the challenge with trying to generate leads like this yourself is that if you were to spend $55 for every lead, you'd be losing money, because that's just a lot of money to pay for one person's information. You may as well, instead of spending $55, trying to just buy them from somebody who's been doing it. That's their whole job. So hopefully that makes sense. I'm not too sure. But the key here is that I know internet leads are frustrating, but the truth is there's really not a better way to get somebody that you can pick up the phone and call today and sell a policy to them tomorrow. It's really easy to keep track of return on investment. Um, and also keep in mind, and I'll talk about this a little bit later, but when you're getting an internet lead, it's not just a lead for today, but this is the contact and the name of somebody that you're going to have forever. And you're going to know what their X dates are. And even if you can't make that sale today, just keep in mind that it's an investment in your agency. So, anyways, with all that stuff being said, it's kind of a love-hate thing about internet leads. But what I want to talk about today is the 15 deadly sins. These are the mistakes that I see agents making when it comes to internet leads, because if you're going to be buying them, may as well get the most you possibly can. So the first mistake is not understanding where these internet leads come from. I've worked with a lot of agents that will show me a lead and they'll tell me, this guy, he's not calling me back. He doesn't want to talk to me. I don't get what's wrong with these people because they're the ones that ask me for a quote. Well, you have to kind of step back and think about the process that these consumers go through to wind up being one of your internet leads. Typically, they're going to wind up going to a website that promises them that they can get several quotes from several different carriers just by filling in their information one time. So the person says, oh, this sounds awesome. You know what I mean? I can do all my shopping in one fell swoop, and I'm going to get this information. And the websites, the way they're set up is they kind of want people to believe that it's all going to be electronic. Like they put in their information, then boom, boom, boom. They're going to see 5 different prices, just like they're using Expedia.com, one of those websites for airplane tickets. But what happens is they get to the very end, and it says, oh, give us your name and your contact information. And this person who kind of thought they were going to get away with not providing that information finally says, you know what? I've spent all this time filling in this information. Here you go. Here's my name. Here's my phone number. Here's my email address. And they hit submit because they think they're about to get all these price quotes. And instead, they get this big screen that says, fantastic. We've just sold your information to 5 different salespeople. So hold on tight because you're going to start getting phone calls from all these people. Now, the reason I bring this up is I'm not necessarily trying to criticize the system as much as I'm trying to say, if you're going to be working internet leads, you need to understand the fact that people are going to be a little bit sensitive from the very get-go because they kind of feel like they got fooled into it. So I know, you've probably had people that tell you on the phone, like, I don't know what you're talking about. I never signed up for that thing. Where did you get this information? Well, the truth is, chances are 9 out of 10 times when somebody says that to you, they're lying. They really did fill in the information, but they don't have a good way to tell you to buzz off. So that's kind of what they're trying to say. They act like it's this big fraud thing. Now, I guess my whole point here is just that, when you have a greater understanding of where these people come from, you'll be better able to use language and conversation to hopefully be able to break that barrier that they're immediately going to have because of the fact that they kind of feel like they got duped into giving their information. That's not every person. Some people know exactly what they're getting signed up for, but a good number of people kind of have this feeling like, oh, if you had told me that you were just going to take my information and give it to all these salespeople, I probably wouldn't have done this. So, keep that in mind. So that was number 1, is not understanding how people become an insurance lead is a major mistake that I see folks making. Number 2 is waiting too long to contact. All right. I'm going to actually reference this study done by Professor James Oldroyd, who's actually from MIT. And one of the conclusions that they came from, they measured leads and the time it takes to contact people. But one of the things they came to, you can find a link to this study in the show notes, by the way, is that the odds of contacting a lead within 5 minutes or within 30 minutes are 100 times worse. So basically, you're 100 times more likely to reach somebody in a favorable situation within 5 minutes than you are within 30 minutes. What that means is if you spend $15 for a lead, it might be worth that when you get it. But 30 minutes later, that $15 lead is worth about 15 cents because it's 100 times less effective. Now think about this. If somebody's online and they're trying to fill out a thing to get a quote for insurance, they get to the end and it says, oh, we're not going to give you these quotes. We're just going to take your information and give it to all these people. Well, they're already on the computer and they wanted to get those prices. So it just makes sense that a lot of those folks are just going to say, all right, well, screw this. I'm just going to go over to progressive.com and I'll get a quote there. And then I'll go to Geico, and then I'll go to Allstate and State Farm and just get my quotes, because I'm not going to sit here and wait for this. But if you can catch those people on the phone while they're still actively thinking about this, while they're in the wheels are in motion, you're going to have a much better opportunity. So the main lesson there is that when an internet lead comes into the agency, whoever's taking it, handle it as fast as you possibly can. Pick up the phone and call the person. Don't work up the quote first. Pick up the phone, get them on the phone as soon as you can. Okay? Don't say, after I finish this customer service thing I'm working on. Don't say, I'll just pick this one up first thing tomorrow morning. When that lead comes in, you have to contact it as soon as you possibly can. It's an absolute must. Another mistake I see related to this is a lot of agents have the leads come in directly to them, and then they allocate them to their people. And that works great if every time a lead comes in, within 30 seconds, you're forwarding it to the right person. But how many times does a lead come into you and it sits in your inbox for 15, 20, 30 minutes, or maybe even 3 days before you send it out to the right person? That's time that's lost. So if you have to set up some automatic forwarding or whatever so that as the leads come in, they go directly to your producers, you do that if that's what you need to do. Because every second you wait, that $15 or whatever you spent for that lead is getting less and less valuable. So that was number 2, was waiting too long to reach out to the prospect. Number 3 is not applying all the discounts. Now, in this case, what I'm actually talking about is those situations where you get the information of the lead, you try to reach out to that person, but you can't get a hold of them. So maybe you leave a message, maybe you send them an email, but you're now in a situation where you're actually creating a quote that you're going to email to them, drop in the mail, whatever you're going to do with it. Now, what happens is people are going through this website and they're filling in their information. There's a really good possibility that they're not really taking that much care and concern about it. So it might ask, do you have a defensive driver class? And they're like, whatever. They just hit no and they go forward. And if you go through and you take their information completely literally and you generate a quote on that, you're going to miss out on discounts that they're probably going to actually have. So what I'm actually getting to here is, unless you know for a fact that the person does not deserve discount A, discount B, discount C, give it to them. Because afterwards you can always take it off. But the thing is, if you haven't had a chance to talk to somebody, the only thing that's talking is your price. And if that's the only thing people have about you, then you got to do everything you can to make it as cheap as possible. And I know a lot of agents don't like to do this. Maybe producers, I should say, don't like to do this because they are uncomfortable with a conversation where a price that was originally X becomes X plus 20%. And I totally understand that. But the key is, at least you're having that conversation. Because if you originally send out that quote as X plus 20%, the person's probably never going to talk to you. And a good workaround, like a talk pass, something that you can say if you ever feel like somebody confronts you about that, or your producers, is to say something like this: listen, we do everything that we can to get our customers every possible discount. Now, other agents, they might actually, they try to make more commissions. So the other agents will probably hold back their discounts. But the way we operate is we'll give you the discount first. And then if and only if you absolutely can't get it, then we take it away. That's our approach, and that's why the price got bigger. We'd love to give you this discount, and here's how we could, but unfortunately it doesn't qualify right now. So that was number 3, is sending out a quote when you haven't had a chance to talk to somebody that doesn't have discounts that the person in all likelihood might actually qualify for. That's, basically you're relying on your price to do the talking for you, so you better put your best price forward. That was number 3. Number 4 is failing to stand out, okay? So when you're working an internet insurance lead, it's a guarantee that at least 3 or 4 other people are working that exact same insurance lead, okay? This isn't a phone call into your agency where you might be the only guy on the other end of the line. You know you're up against other people, so you have to do something to make your quote stand out. Part of that is giving a good price, which is what I just talked about. But there's a lot of other things. And I'm going to link in the show notes to an article I wrote a couple weeks ago about just a bunch of different ideas of things you can do to make your quote stand out. I'll give you an example to get you thinking about it, but I would actually read that entire article. One example is You can take maybe the custom formatting that your quote gets sent out with, and you can actually take the information and maybe have a graphic designer design a quote for you, or excuse me, not a quote, but like a template, like a page that looks nice, that really catches people's attention. And maybe you take the quote that automatically gets sent through your system, and you can just copy it and paste it into this document so that you have something that looks better. I know some agents who've created even just a cover page that is really nice, that will get people's attention, and then they use a PDF merging tool so that they can put that cover page on the cover of their quotes, and it's just a little something that makes them stand out. That's probably not the best idea from that article I wrote. So I would go to the show notes, which you can get at insurancesplash.com/5, and you'll see a link with I don't know how many, but probably like 20 different ideas of how your quotes can stand out from the competition. Number 5, the fifth thing I see agents failing to do is tracking the success rates of their different companies that they purchase leads from. And I have to give you like a little bit of a background story to this. I used to have a job where I worked throughout the state of New Jersey, and I was a consultant for insurance agents for a major carrier. And I remember that one of these really interesting things that I found is that I would go to one agency and I would say, "Are you having any success with internet leads?" And they would say, "Yes, company A is giving me awesome internet leads. Company A is awesome. Company B, I hate them. I would punch them in the face. I would I would kick them between the legs if I got a chance, because company B has the worst leads in the world." And then I drive on down the road and I talk, 3 miles later, I'm talking to another agent who says the exact same thing, except the companies are switched. He thinks that the company that the other guy thinks was horrible, he thinks is the best one in the world. And I can remember talking to other people who had the same job as I did, and they would say, "Well, we think it's a really regional thing." Like, and I always remember thinking, like, well, that's kind of weird. Like, are you really telling me that 5 miles apart, it's like a totally different internet? Like, people are real into it here and they're not here. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. But the more I thought about it, the more I recognized that what was happening was a psychological phenomenon called confirmation bias. And it works like this. You're buying leads from, say, 3 different companies, and one of those companies, just by the luck of the draw, starts to send you like 5 or 6 really good ones in a row. Maybe one is like a real popper that you make like $1,000 in commission on. Now, immediately you start to compare this to the other 2, and you start thinking, wow, these guys are really much better than those guys. And then what happens is, every time a bad one comes from the other ones, you think, you know what? That confirms what I thought. Those guys suck. And every time a good one comes from the one that you kind of like put all your chips into, every time that happens, you think, you know what? I was right. Those guys really are better. And before you know it, you kind of start to think that this one company is better than the other company. Now, I can tell you for a fact that 3 of the biggest companies are all owned by the same people. It's the same leads. But there just happens to be this situation where sometimes agents tend to believe they get a bias towards one company over the other. Now, there's a very simple solution to this, which is to keep track of the number of sales that you get versus the number of leads that you purchase from each of these different carriers. So if you try to go with your intuition will probably be wrong. There's just way too much bias, too much emotion involved in something like this. So just make it really simple for yourself. Keep track of where your different leads are coming from. And then after you've tried different services and you've actually got enough numbers, and the numbers have to be pretty high for these results to be significant. But if you had 100 leads from, say, 3 different companies, I would say that the information that you would have there about close ratio and average premium dollars should be something that you can actually work with. But if you try to rely on just your intuition of which is the best company, you're probably going to fail. So keep track of that. It's incredibly important. So that's number 5, keeping track of your success rates from the different companies that you buy leads from. Number 6, and this is a mistake that is really more like the agent's mistake or the office manager's mistake, and this mistake is not allocating your leads appropriately. So I've worked with a ton of agents who do this thing where they say, I've got 2 producers, so every lead that comes through with the last name of A through L, I'm going to give that to producer A, And then the L through Z, all those leads are going to go to producer B. That's the fairest way to do it. That's how I'm going to do it. That way everybody will know what. Now, I kind of get it, but the truth is life is not fair, and sales is definitely not fair. So if one of your sales producers is better than the other one at closing, why would you give them each the same leads? I mean, wouldn't it make more sense to give the higher value, better leads to the better salesperson and the lower value, worse leads to the other one? I mean, let's be honest. This is battle. This is war. Okay. And if you're sending in 2 soldiers into a fight, you want to make sure you give the best weapons to the better soldier. It's what you have to do as a business owner. Now, another thing to think about that's kind of related to this is that people will buy from a salesperson who is more similar to them in things like their age, their gender, their everything like sexual orientation, their race. I don't know what else I said so far. But so let's just say that you have one young man who's selling for you and one older woman. Well, if a lead comes through and it's an 80-year-old woman, give it to your female sales producer. She's going to relate to that person a lot better than your 21-year-old fast-talking iPhone-using kid, right? So, the A through L, M through Z, I mean, it might kind of work, but I'd really think about giving your better leads to the better person. And there's a lot of ways that you can figure that out. Next, the next mistake I see people making is, I'll use a little term here, making it rain internet leads. What I'm talking about here is I've worked with a lot of agencies where they're buying so many internet leads that the producers can barely keep up with all that work. Now, if you're paying $15 for each one of these leads and a producer is getting more leads than they can even handle in a day, that's really not getting the best value for your money. For example, I've been sitting in agencies where I'm working with a producer and they'll get an email and they'll look at it and it'll be a lead and they'll say, oh, you know what? This guy's over from Bridgeport. He's on the other side of the tracks. This guy, they never buy anything. I'll just let this one go. All right. You have to be sure that your producers have a really clear understanding of how valuable these leads are. Because if they start to look at them like it's just something they take for granted, they're not going to be working those. Okay. So, I mean, just make sure that your folks understand the value of these internet leads, because, I mean, it's quite possible you could be spending more on internet leads than you are on their salary. And I don't know. So that was number 7, is giving your producers so many internet leads that they start to take it for granted and they don't value the actual value of each one of those internet leads. Number 8 is being under aggressive. Okay, now I know that this goes without saying in any sales situation, but you have to understand that with internet leads, there's going to be competition every single time. There's going to be other agents that are calling these people, and it's going to take some kind of aggressiveness to make it work. Now, here's a little tip for producers. If you're working with a producer who's under aggressive, what you have to do is you can't just tell them, okay, I need you to be more aggressive. You have to give them specific advice about exactly what to do. So you can tell them when an internet lead comes in, I want you to pick up the phone and I want you to ask these 3 questions. If you don't get a hold of the person, this is what I want you to do. I want you to send them an email. I want you to do this. I want you to do this. If, I want you to call them X number of times per day for this many days. I want you to email them this number of times for this many days. You give them exactly what they need to do. And 9 times out of 10, your producer's going to have no trouble following through when you've written a very clear plan for them about how to be aggressive. And speaking of being aggressive, let's talk about the next mistake that I see agents making with internet leads, which is being over aggressive. Now, I've worked with agents where, I'll be sitting there with an agent or a producer and they'll say, I just don't understand these people. They're not calling me back. I left this guy 6 messages today and he has the nerve not to call me back. No, I mean, like, what did you say in that 6th message that wasn't relayed in the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th message? Okay. Now, there's, being an aggressive salesperson is important, but not being repetitive, annoying, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting to get different results. You have to think to yourself, okay, if I've called 3 times and they're not answering my phone, I've left 3 messages and they're not calling back, what do I need to do different? What do I need to do so that that person is dying to call me back? And that actually just made me think of another article I've written, which is, I don't know, like 15 to 25 different ways to get people to call you back. And there's a lot of tips there, like ways you can leave good messages that will basically leave people on the edge of their seat so that they really want to call you back. So that was number 9, is being over aggressive, but in the wrong way, so that you're just basically pissing people off. That's not really good sales sales techniques. All right. Now, that was number 9. Number 10 is living only for today when it comes to your internet leads. What I'm talking about here, and I referenced this earlier in the podcast, is that your internet leads are not just a one-time make a sale this week type of thing. And your producers, who might be living in more of a month-to-month, week-to-week mindset, are even more likely to look at it this way than you are. You need to consider the fact that when you're buying an internet lead, you're not just buying an opportunity to make a sale this week or this month. You're buying the name of someone who shops for insurance. You know who their carrier is. You know all their information. And you know when their X date is. So you might not sell them this time, but if you follow up with them 6, 12, 18, 24, 36 months from now, in a very non-confrontational, but just a, hey, things have probably changed for you, and I know you've shopped for insurance in the past, so I'm going to send out another quote for you because, if we can help you, there's no end to how far we will go to be able to help you. So remember that, and remember that your sales producers, they're not going to be thinking about making a sale 18 months from today the way that you are. So this is something that you're really going to have to spearhead as the agent in the office, is that, how are we going to take these leads? How are we going to prioritize them so that 6 months from now, not only are we, working the stuff that we have, but we're going to have a list of people that we tried to sell 6 months prior. How are we going to go through this? You're going to have to spearhead that. All right, that was number 10. Number 11. The number 11 mistake that I see agents making is not using enough filters when they're buying leads from the internet lead providers. And the key here is, with most of these services, the more filters that you put on there. So you say, I want people only with excellent credit. The more filters you put, the more expensive the lead is, because the idea is the more likely you are to sell it if it's a more ideal target for you. So they're going to charge more money. And it's hard sometimes because agents say, hey, if I can get a general lead for $8, but I have to pay $15 for this, multi-car homeowner good credit lead, how can I justify paying twice as much for the same lead? Well, the answer is you have to be keeping track of what you're selling, and you have to be keeping track of what you're investing. So, I'll keep the math real simple here, but if let's say that you're either buying $10 leads or you're buying $20 leads, okay? And for every $110 leads that you buy, you make, I'll say, 10 sales. For every $20 leads that you sell, for every 100 of those, you're going to make, let's say, 25 sales. Now, the key here is that for 100 leads at $10, you're talking about $1,000 worth of leads to make you 10 sales. If you're buying 100 leads at $20, you're talking about $2,000 that you're spending. But you're actually making more sales by buying the more expensive leads. Now, I'm not saying that it always makes sense to buy more expensive leads. I'm saying that you need to keep track of your high expense leads and your low expense leads, which ones you're closing more, and how much average commission you're making for those, because chances are the more expensive leads are going to be higher dollar value policies that are going to be more valuable to you as well. So just keep that in mind. It might be worth paying twice as much for a lead if you can close more than 2 times as many of them. Make sense? I hope so. Okay. Next mistake, number 12 on our list, is throwing away bad leads. Now, I know it's frustrating when your lead doesn't qualify for your product, but, it's important not to burn it too soon. Okay, so the lead comes through and you reach out to the person. They say, you know what, we have too many. We have 12 accidents, and maybe you're a captive carrier and you can't write a policy for somebody with 12 accidents. Don't just throw it away. All right. Remember that this person's life could change a lot in the future. Maybe they could get married to somebody. Maybe they could, I don't know, their credit could change. A lot of different things could change. And they might have other insurance needs that you can help with. They might have friends and family that you can help. And that lead was expensive. All right. So hold on to even your bad leads and reach out to them periodically. You might be the only agent who actually does that. Okay. A lot can change. Think about your own life. What's changed in your life 3 years ago compared to today, 5 years ago compared to today? A whole lot has changed in my life if I looked at 5 years ago today. Oh my goodness. 5 years ago, I had 2 less children and 1 less wife. So a lot can change in 3-5 years. So don't just take those bad ones and throw them out because sometimes people get out of prison and everything turns around. Okay, so the next mistake I see people making, number 13, is accepting false objections. Okay, let me give you an example. You reach out to the insurance lead guy and he says, "How did you get my information? I didn't fill out any online forms." You know what the truth is? Yes, you did. You did. I'm not saying that's always the case, but more often than not, people are just trying to get you off their back and they don't know what to say because they know that you're well versed in all of your how to overcome all your different objections. And the next thing they might tell you is, "Oh, you know what? I'm sorry, I already bought another policy. It's too late." Guess what? No, you probably didn't. You're just telling me something. Okay? I already know. I already bought another policy. Sorry. No, you didn't. Keep pushing. Keep fishing. Try to get more information about that. All right? They also might tell you, "You know what? I changed my mind. I was just shopping around. And the truth is, I don't want to change insurance. I'm very happy." Well, guess what? You do want to change insurance. Okay? Because nobody would have taken 15 minutes to fill out this information if you didn't have some kind of problems with what was going on. And you've already taken the time to fill out that information. So why don't we just run with it? Just give me an opportunity to see if I can help you, and we'll take it from there. Now, of course, any of these things, people might actually be telling you this, and it might be true, but keep in mind that there's a lot of false objections. Remember where these leads come from, the barriers that some people are going to be putting up to you before they even talk to you. Keep all that stuff in mind. Number 14, the mistake number 14 that I see agents making is burning the bridges. Now, this is true in every sales interaction, okay? That if you can't make the sale in the first time, make sure that you preserve the opportunity to do it in the future. I mean, I've already talked about a few things that are alluding to this idea, but you never know what might change, okay? So, I mean, the other day I had this guy who actually came out to my office to talk to me about health insurance. And I let him give me his spiel, and to be honest with you, he sucked. He was such a bad salesman. He was like straight out of the 70s with everything. It was so insulting. But I still kind of respected that he came out and talked to me. And so he got to the end, and I told him straight up, I was like, I respect what you're doing. It's all good. I'm in this situation where, it's not going to happen right now. I'm respecting you enough to tell you that, but I'm open to the opportunity within the next 6 months. And the guy basically slammed his book shut and left my office. And I'm thinking, man, dude, I really would have bought from you 6 months later. And 6 months later, that situation actually arose. And there was not a chance in heck that I was going to reach out to this guy. So remember, when you can't make that sale, just make sure that you're setting yourself up for a potential sale sometime in the future. It just makes sense. And it goes along with the other idea of making sure that these are not one-time investments in your agency. These are long-term investments when you buy internet leads. Number 15, the last on this list of mistakes that agents make with internet leads is relying too much on internet leads. Now, I know it's tough, especially for brand new agents when they first get started. A lot of the marketing stuff you do can take a long time to really kick in. And so I understand the need to, hey, let's go with internet leads. Let's get rolling. We can get people on the phone today by buying internet leads. And I do think that internet leads should have a place in almost any agent's marketing plan. But I have also seen a lot of agents who that is their marketing plan. And I really do think that that's a challenge. Even if it's working great for you and it has worked great for you, relying on any one thing is kind of like putting all of your money into one stock. And even if it's the best stock in the world, you never know what can happen to it. So it's very reasonable to believe that the quality of internet leads could go down fast. Some things could change. And if that's all you know how to do, then you could be in trouble. So that it is. There that it is. There was my top 15 mistakes that I see insurance agents making with their internet leads. Now, I want to, there's something that I alluded to here at the beginning. There's kind of a marketing lesson. I mentioned that I originally started this podcast almost a year ago, I think. And I created like 4 different episodes, and then I pretty much put it on the back burner, haven't done anything since then. And the challenge is that I started the endeavor with really wide eyes. I was really excited about, changing the world of podcasts, and I had all these really ambitious plans for it, and I think that's awesome. That's really great. But one of the challenges is that I kind of bit off a little bit more than I can chew, and I didn't come up with a plan to create the content regularly and continuously. Okay. So what I was relying on doing is kind of like what I do with my blog is, I'll just come up with something new every week. And for podcasting, that was just one more thing that I had to be creative about, and it really created a challenge for me. So what I'm planning to do moving forward is I'm going to run these podcasts based off of the most popular articles on my blog. So for example, there was an article that I wrote that was 15 deadly sins that insurance agents make about marketing. Now, this might be repetitive if you've already read the article. I don't think that's a bad thing, but I think I can reach a lot more folks with the same with information that's going to be helpful for them. And the lesson here, there's a very powerful marketing lesson, especially in this age of content marketing, which is that if you don't have a system in place that makes it easy to follow through, then you're not going to be able to follow through. And that's exactly what I saw. Now that I've taken this approach of I'm going to create a list of my most popular articles, and I'm going to run these podcasts, not word for word, because I put a lot of different ideas and things, but I'm going to run them off of that content. All of a sudden now the idea of being able to sit down and crank out 5 or 6 of these at a time and have podcasts ready to go for 6 or 8 weeks at a time, now I can actually see the light. I can see how this works. So if you're thinking about the same thing, like you want to start a blog or you want to start networking events or really anything, make sure that you do it, even if you have to set your sights a little bit lower. But if you know that the plan you're taking is something that you can follow through with, that's important. So that's my final note that I wanted to talk about. Again, to remind you, I'll have links to any of the resources that I mentioned today in this podcast on the show notes, which you can access at insurancesplash.com/5. Another thing I want to mention is that if you find value in the content and information that I give on this podcast, it would mean a lot to me if you could go out to iTunes and just write a positive review, preferably with 5 stars, about how much value you find out of this podcast. The more you do that, it helps me be able to reach out and help more agents like yourself. And then also, if you have a question that you want to ask, I do have a phone line that you can call up and record a question, and just call it up and ask something about insurance marketing or insurance sales or anything. And if I think it fits the needs of everyone else who follows the podcast, I will use it on air and I'll give you a little shout out. So I'd like to make it as interactive as possible. That is all I have for today. Hopefully it wasn't too long. I have a phone line that you can call up and record a question, and just call it up and ask something about insurance marketing or insurance sales or anything. And if I think it fits the needs of everyone else who follows the podcast, I will use it on air and I'll give you a little shout out. So I'd like to make it as interactive as possible. That is all I have for today. Hopefully it wasn't too long. I have a phone line that you can call up and record a question, and just call it up and ask something about insurance marketing or insurance sales or anything. And if I think it fits the needs of everyone else who follows the podcast, I will use it on air and I'll give you a little shout out. So I'd like to make it as interactive as possible. That is all I have for today. Hopefully it wasn't too long. I have a phone line that you can call up and record a question, and just call it up and ask something about insurance marketing or insurance sales or anything. And if I think it fits the needs of everyone else who follows the podcast, I will use it on air and I'll give you a little shout out. So I'd like to make it as interactive as possible. That is all I have for today. Hopefully it wasn't too long, but stay tuned because I'm going to start cranking these things out a lot more frequently, and I know that I can help you. I hope that I can help you. That's probably more appropriate. Have a great day. Sell lots of insurance. Keep a smile on your face. Thank you for listening. Have a great day.
Thanks for listening to Insurance.